Oh, N64. We're coming to your house next time.
You don't have to be, great at math to enjoy mathematics. And the thing is, you can be great at math with practice. And so we do a lot of stuff on the growth mindset.
Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Beam and Danny Hogger as they explore the why of teaching.
Welcome to Inspiring Teachers. I'm Danny Hogger alongside Tavis Beam for another exciting edition, and we're going to the interwebs once again. Has it gone to the point where interwebs got to be cool and novel, and now so many people said it that it's now ramped down to internet would be cooler? I don't know. I don't know if we've crossed that threshold, but I'll tell you what we are about to cross. The threshold of teaching excellence. And we're here with Thom Gibson on Skype. Tom, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Oh, man, it's so good to have you. We've been researching and making a short list of who we want to talk to around the country. So jump into Texas is cool today. And, you're just doing so many things that kind of inspire both of us, both with Tavis teaching woodshop and me teaching Gov Econ and some of the ideas that you seem to be floating in every realm. And the through line is, how do you make better teaching experiences and how can you accomplish your task better? So we don't know about you, though, is how did you come to teaching in the first place?
I studied audio engineering. I didn't plan to become a teacher. I loved making projects, audio projects, and later on in college, more video projects as well. And once I finished my Bachelor's of Science in Audio Engineering in December of 2010, I knew that I did not really want to work in most of the places that my colleagues were going to. It was kind of like music studios or trying to do audio for like a TV station. And none of that really interested me because I liked working on my own projects and not really other people's. And so I was dating who is now she's now my wife, Sarah, and I knew that we wanted to get married the following summer. I was like, I got to get a job. And so I guess I'll try this teaching thing. A couple things in college kind of pointed me to that. I led an international Bible study for a lot of students who weren't Christians, but were interested in learning more about the Bible. And so what was interesting is I found myself like, okay, let me print out this part of the Bible in Korean, and let me print out this in Japanese, and let me, have these questions. So like differentiating almost like from my own group of people in my, not really a classroom, but kind of like learning how to teach in that regard. And then I remember one specific moment in an electronics course, and I was not very, very keen on all the electronic stuff. I maintained kind of a B average in a lot of those classes, but I remember there was this one system of equations and this thing that the professor was explaining and no one was getting. And I was like, I get this. Like, I totally get this. This totally makes sense to me. And he actually said, it was like a class of like 40 people. He's like, does anyone want to come up and try to explain this? And I got up and I was like, well, the way I'm thinking about it is this, and then it comes together like that. And then I had some of my friends say like, yeah, I had no idea what was going on until you got up there. So I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something in this teaching thing. And so I started substitute teaching. The first day was horrible. It was a middle school math class. I walked in, there was no lesson plans. I think the teacher was doing in-service professional development or something, because she came in, she's like, oh, here's some worksheets, and they're a good group of kids. They're just a little chatty. And I'm like, okay. And it was horrible. And I just remember sitting and thinking like, man, I don't know what to do here. It's during my lunch period. Like, I wasn't even hungry. I couldn't even eat my lunch that day just because it's like the kids were just walking all over me. But the great thing about substitute teaching is it truly is like you get a new start every day. Right. The next day I was like, okay, this group of kids does not know that the kids yesterday just walked all over me. So I can try something different. And so it gave me a chance to kind of experiment and see. And I found like when I first started to actually get a handle on some of these classes and even really begin to kind of connect with these kids and what's working and what's not working and what's resulting in kids wanting to kind of start arguing with a substitute and be like, we don't usually do it like that. And what's actually getting them to actually do their work. I kind of started seeing it like, well, this is kind of fun. It was kind of like a game, like just like, how can I figure this out and make this work? And so I did alternative certification while I was doing my substitute teaching. And then that summer I applied to a bunch of places and didn't get any callbacks. And I remember one thing that one of the guys in my teaching certification said, it's like, you know what, just take your resume, go to schools, don't ask for an interview, just say, I just want to meet the principal. give an updated copy of my resume and just put a face to the name. And so I did that to about 40 different schools, from middle school to high school to elementary. I was certified in generalist 4 through 8, so I could teach any of like the core classes, as well as speech and technology. And from that, I got 3 interviews and 2 job offers, and started teaching 5th grade for 3 years. And then have since moved and am in my 5th year of teaching middle school math. And I love it. I love learning how to do it better. And it's fun. So that was kind of like my path to where I am now, though.
I never did substitute teaching, and I think that would have really helped me a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the movie Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Or it's like you're just trying to improve yourself each day.
Yeah, every day is just a little bit better.
Or as I jump straight in, it's like I got these kids for the next year, and every failure I made that first day stuck with me for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's what was what I was so thankful for, was that it was giving me a chance to kind of like hone the classroom management skills in a way that I probably wouldn't have gotten had I jumped right into a classroom.
Yeah, definitely.
We both graduated 2010. We're both in our 5th year. We both graduated during that recovery from that recession.
Yeah.
Remember how rough that was? I was talking to my econ students about that, where I had college professors telling me, don't graduate. Why don't you slow down? Why don't you take another year, add another major, take a little time to figure it out. And we both came to teaching. So you also, with background in audio, as radio, TV, film, how do you think that kind of training and background helps you in crafting messages and in crafting lessons? How did that make you different?
Well, I think it made me very project oriented. And so for a long time, my big project was just like education and teaching. And like my first and second years just coming home, my wife's a pediatrician. And so she was in medical school through the time of my first year's teaching. So both of us would just kind of be coming home and just working like all night, because she's studying and then I was getting stuff ready. And so I think having that project mentality of like, how can I make this classroom, this classroom is my project, how can I make it better and better and better? One of the things that have benefited me at my current school is I've gotten the chance to teach the same course year after year with a couple new changes here and there. But for the most part, I've taught pre-algebra for the last 4 years. And so the fact that I don't have to kind of rewrite new lesson plans or learn a whole new content area has kind of opened up time for me to branch out and do projects still related to education, but kind of in the world of digital media, of creating. I started watching Casey Neistat vlogs back in like 2015, and I was like, I want to make videos. I kind of made videos in college, and so like I think I could probably do this YouTube thing. And so that started me creating YouTube videos that would serve as reflections for me, which has kind of improved my teaching, because I would go back sometimes and watch a video from like the previous year on a lesson that I thought was pretty well, but I kind of filmed myself before, during, and after the lesson and said like, if I do this next year, I'm going to try this a little bit differently. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that aspect of it didn't really go very well. And it's also given me a chance to kind of connect with other educators and kind of say like, here's some lessons that have worked out for me. Let me know what's worked for you. And a lot of times finding other educators that are creating content like that is kind of it's helped increase the reflection piece of my teaching, as well as the sharing piece, because when you're, in addition to the videos, I was also blogging for a couple years, like every week on Fridays of like how things went. It really forces you to slow down, like what went well, what didn't go well. And I think had I not had those avenues, I really wouldn't have spent as much time in reflection as I did, because even just the fact of polishing these videos or polishing these blogs forced me to kind of break down. I was like, well, what's not actually clear about this to myself? What aspect of it am I not really getting or able to communicate because it's unclear? So I think just having projects early on helped me make my classroom my project, and then later on when I wasn't learning as much content, these other avenues have aided in the reflection process of teaching.
So what type of activities have you been doing with your students? Like what did you start off with, and what does that evolved into?
In regards to kind of creating digital content, like I would try to think of the fact that one of the first years I was doing it, I was like, okay, I want to make one video a week of something going on in my classroom. Forced me to be like, okay, I don't have anything interesting going on in my classroom this week. I need to come up with something interesting to go on. And so a lot of times I would film robotics classes because they were a lot more hands-on and engaging. And so I created this whole robotics series of just different projects that I was doing. But then like it started me to also think about like, what can I do that's a little bit more hands-on and visually engaging, like if it was a video in my math classes. And so I found like these lessons where you could teach square roots using Cheez-Its by using like making a 4x4 square made up of Cheez-Its. And it's like, well, how many Cheez-Its is that? And how long is one side? Can you make a square with 6 Cheez-Its? Well, no, I can only make a rectangle. Right. And so just kind of like filming that, like the process of like filming that made me actually seek out some of these more engaging lessons that I could do, and then I could share with other people, and that would end up making more interesting content, hopefully more helpful content to other teachers, and finding other things where using manipulatives and using these colored cubes to kind of visualize prime numbers, which I had never done before. And so it's like, oh, this is really cool. Let me do this. Let me film this, and let me make this kind of a cool experience for my students, and then document that process as well. And so that was kind of how the digital media influenced what I was actually doing in my class.
Right. That's really neat. You used it as inspiration.
Yeah.
You used it as a vehicle to help your class become a more engaging environment. We're always being told, use lots of visuals, use lots of hands-on. And here's a great way that's like, well, does it pass the YouTube test?
I know. Would this be an interesting video? Does this get good content? If not, then I need to figure something out.
Yeah, you know what, too? And if your manipulatives are delicious, that's even better.
The kids love it.
What are some other ways that you make algebra a subject that engages students and brings them in, and not the subject where people walk in and say, oh no, math?
A few things. Some students really like the classroom economy that I have set up in my class, which is more of a classroom management system. It's less about like teaching specific pre-algebra skills, but kids get opportunities to apply for jobs in the beginning of the year so they can have enough money to pay rent on their desk, unless they want to become owners of their desk, and then they no longer have to pay rent, but it can grow in value before the end of the year. And then they have days where they can make extra supplemental bonus money or start their own businesses. And then there's auctions at the end of the month where one student will bring in, their class job is to fundraise items to sell. And then they're like, all right, we've got really crazy economics. You'll have like a cupcake sell for like 2 months' wages, but then someone has like a $25 gift card where it's like, like that, it's like barely any money in the actual economy. It's like the immediate gratification is like definitely at play in the classroom economy. But a lot of students have
the basis of the economy that we're rational entities.
It's like, can I eat it now?
It's like the ultimate marshmallow test.
I don't know if that McDonald's gift card is going to serve me right now. But it gives kids a lot of opportunity to kind of like explore that world of like, oh, I really want this job. So how can I apply, and what can I say about it, or get a letter of recommendation, or how can I save money and become a landlord and buy someone else's desk and have them pay me rent? And so that becomes like a pretty cool element of the class that goes throughout the whole year that a lot of kids really connect with, and then just gets them excited to come to class a lot of times. As far as the actual
buy-in through it.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, this is really fun. It's auction day. Like, yeah, let's do the auction, or it's bonus money day or something like that. As far as teaching the actual content, a lot of times, the way I explain it to people is, the way I learned math was a lot of the times the teacher would say like, all right, here's the concept, here's what we're doing, I'll show you how to do it. Now let's all do some of them together, and now you do it on your own. And I try to flip that model where I'll give something to the students that is a little bit out of their reach, and I'll say, I want you to give this a shot. It's okay if you get it wrong. It's okay if you're not sure. I just want you to try something independently. Now I want you to talk to the people around you. What did you guys do? Did you do the same things? Did you do something different? Does someone have any background knowledge? And then they'll start talking, like, no, you have to do this. Or if they're learning order of operations, and some of them may have some more background knowledge than others, they'll kind of argue about it. And then we'll come together, and I'll start asking for ideas. What are some of the things that you guys have done? Or I heard a lot of people do this. Who did this? I heard, who agrees with that idea? Who doesn't agree with that idea? And by the point that we're talking about it as a whole group, there's so much more bought into it, because like, okay, I want to see, was I on the right track? And it also, it's less about like, instead of saying, what did you do? Or instead of saying, what's the right answer? I'm asking questions like, what did you do? Or what did you guys talk about? Which is a lot easier of a question. It's less intimidating. Well, we talked about this, she did this, and I did this, and neither of us are really sure, but that's what we did. awesome. Did anybody else do something like that? Did anybody else do something differently? So kind of reframing my question, so it's less about like what's the right answer, and let me in more into your thought process and communicate that. And so I think that becomes a little bit more of a less intimidating environment for a lot of students, particularly the ones that are coming in. It's like, oh, I'm not very good at math. It's like, that's great. You know, you don't have to be, great at math to enjoy mathematics. And the thing is, you can be great at math with practice. And so we do a lot of stuff on the growth mindset. There's a website that I use called ucubed, cubed.org, and they have a ton of really good activities that I use early on in the year that have supplemental videos on like being good at math isn't about being fast at math, and how some of the best math thinkers are some of the slowest thinkers. And math isn't just about like finding the right answer, because sometimes it's more about the process of what you're learning from your mistakes and things like that. And so I try to start the year off with those messages and reinforce those messages by the way I talk to students and by the way I have them talk to each other. I'll rarely be like, that's not right. But yeah. If I will tell them, like sometimes someone will put up a wrong answer and nobody catches it, and I'll just be like, I disagree with something that's up here. Can someone maybe find where you think I disagree? And then it becomes like, oh, let me see if I can figure it out. Let me check their calculations. And it's almost more like a puzzle. So that's kind of the way that I try to make it a more inclusive environment for everybody, whether they feel they have a strong math background or not.
Do you feel like other teachers are using this same mindset, or are you kind of alone in that?
I'm the only one doing this. No.
I feel like more and more we're getting more teachers with this mindset around math, but yet I still feel like year after year I'm dealing with the same struggles with students, is that they've got the mindset of I've got it wrong. All that matters is getting it right. And I keep saying, no, it's what matters to me is not whether or not you get it right or wrong. What matters is that you have the aha moment. If you have the aha moment, that's the moment where it's more valuable than getting it right the first time. It's you got it wrong, you see the error in your way, and now you know how to do it right the next time.
Yeah, to answer the question, I think there's a lot of, at least in like what the people that I follow, kind of like on the math Twitter sphere, that's where I end up getting a lot of my ideas of what are different ways of teaching math, either from recommendations or papers that people post. There's a hashtag on Twitter called MTBOS, Math Twitter Blogosphere. And that's where a lot of people will be putting resources, or they even put up a problem and be like, how can I explain this in a way that I don't have to show the kid tricks or little things to memorize, but how can I teach conceptual understanding? uCubed is another one of those resources. The NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, has a really good book on teaching the different, how do you promote math discussions in your classroom? I can't remember what the exact title is, but it's something along the lines of like promoting mathematical discussions. And so it's a lot of teachers doing it. I don't know how mainstream it is right now as far as math classrooms. But most of the things that I've learned from the questions that I've been trying to ask, and the questions that I try not to ask, and the types of problems that I'm trying to do, a lot of it I find from other math educators on YouTube or on Twitter. But one of the things that you were saying, what was the last thing that you had said? I had a thought about it where you said a lot of the... What was the last thing that you had said?
It's after school. I kept no brain. I don't remember.
Okay. Maybe it'll come back.
It had something to do with teachers.
Oh, you getting it wrong and kind of learning from your mistake. And so one of the things that I do when I finish a test is I'll take a commonly missed problem or a few commonly missed problems on the test, and then I'll write it out and work it out the exact way that most students who got it wrong will work it out. And then maybe I'll just highlight the first place that the mistake was made. Or maybe I won't highlight anything. And then I'll project that and be like, this was a pretty commonly missed problem. What do you think the error is here? And I call it my favorite mistakes, because I tell them these are the most valuable mistakes. I think I called them my favorite mistakes, and kids were like, why is it your favorite mistakes? But I now call them the most valuable mistakes, because I felt like they were common mistakes that a lot of us can learn from. So it's just another way that I'm trying to reinforce that idea that it's like mistakes are expected. It's not we're trying to avoid mistakes at all costs. Mistakes are expected because that's where you're going to learn. You're going to try to see where you made the mistake or where others made the mistakes that you can learn from. So hopefully not make the mistake again in the future.
Now that I'm teaching woodshop instead of teaching elementary school math or middle school math, I've been using a lot of those picture problems where it's like 2 bananas, plus an apple is equal to 10. So they have to use inductive reasoning to figure out, like where do they crack the code? Which fruit will crack the code for them? And then there's always a trick that's thrown in there, usually an order of operations trick. And it's fun because half the class will get 11, the other half will get 14. And then we have to have that discussion about, okay, where is the error here? And who here wants to argue for 11? And who here wants to argue for 14? And
kids
I
love
think
to argue
the more you can develop that relationship with the kids in the classroom, like you're saying, where they feel comfortable saying, no, it's 11, and getting up there and really defending it. And they feel that despite the fact that, no, it was 14, that the most important part was that they were able to argue their point.
Yeah. Can you mathematically articulate? Can you convince me of your line of reasoning?
So, Thom, thanks so much for joining us. We've got one last question for you before we get into the section and promote all the great things that you're doing. And the question is, we've talked a little bit about your why of teaching. Now let's pretend that you've already brought them in, you've engaged them, you've had a good time, they've enjoyed it. They have a whole new outlook on math thanks to the way that you approach and your diligence in working. Now it's the end of the year. They're walking out. And before we set off into the literal sunset, because I can see the sun fading in our faces as the window is facing us. Before they leave your classroom, Mr. Gibson, what's something that you would like they to have learned from you besides just curriculum?
Well, I'm hoping that just being the time in my classroom and the way that I interacted with the students in a warm, welcoming, and respectful way, and treated each student with dignity, that would be kind of what they pull. Just my character. Hopefully, throughout the year, that I was an embodiment of good quality character, based on how they felt, the way I treated them, and based on the way that they saw me treating the student that they were super annoyed with all year, and struggled to be kind to, or struggled to be respectful to, and that from that model that they would try to take those lessons of the expectations on how they were to treat one another, and how they were to treat themselves, and the way that they would talk to themselves in the classroom, and move forward with that. I mean, I hope that I imagine that that's the goal of many educators, is that you want them to come out as better people, not just people that know a little bit more content. I kind of joke with friends of mine. They're like, "What do you do?" It's like, or "What do you do?" If it's someone who's just made it. Well, I'm trying to teach young people how not to be terrible people. So how to be, just a good person, a kind person, a respectful person, someone who contributes. That's the goal.
I like to say, teach them how to human.
Yeah, teach them how to human. That's probably a little.
My wife's a kindergarten teacher, so she teaches them how to school.
Yeah.
They come in day one. It's just everywhere.
Hey, Thom, we so much appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your motivation and inspiration for us. Where can people find more of what you do, and how can they become fans of the Thom Gibson experience?
The Thom Gibson experience. On my website, I've got the blog and links to a lot of places, thomgibson.com, THOMGIBSON.com. On YouTube and on Twitter, Gibson EDU, like education. Mostly on YouTube, it's mostly there's like a whole series on the classroom economy and how I do that. There's a whole series on middle school robotics and math lessons. And lately I've been doing more general education type videos. Also just started a new channel because I do teach YouTube video production. So if anyone is interested in kind of starting their own YouTube channel, or any teachers wanting to start their own YouTube channel, it's called Thom Teaches YouTube. And if you just search that, it'll pop up, and it'll be, all the filmmaking tutorials and audio tutorials and what to think about when you're creating YouTube videos and a YouTube channel, as well as assignments. The assignments that I give to my students, I'm going to be posting up there so people can actually, if they want that more structured environment and they don't want just a bunch of random YouTube videos they're trying to follow, Thom Teaches YouTube is another option. And in the education space, in the podcasting world, the Thom Gibson podcast, it's more NPR style, less interview style. I'm kind of taking themes, doing several different interviews, getting classroom audio, mixing it all together, and kind of telling a story from the classroom. And so that's on anywhere that you're watching or listening to podcasts. And lastly, on Instagram, Instagram, which has nothing to do with education. I've got an Instagram called Books and Beef Jerky, where I wanted to read more books and like read more fiction and nonfiction. I was like, well, maybe I have an Instagram where I'm like logging and try to like do at least one nonfiction and one fiction a month. That'll kind of put a little fire in me to read a little bit more to get it done by the end of the month. And I wanted some other tie in with it, and I like beef jerky, so I've got like a beef jerky of the month club thing that I signed up for. So it's a mix of book reviews and beef jerky reviews. So if you like both of those things, then you can follow me.
Trying to get a very specific audience.
Yeah, very very niche content there.
Well, I like the tenderness and flavor of this interview. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You've got us fired up and motivated. We hope maybe we can be a guest on for you sometime.
Yeah, such amazing content you're putting out there.
Doing
Thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing. And I'll definitely be watching your robotics videos and your YouTube making videos as we continue to expand what we're doing here.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you guys reaching out. This was a lot of fun. This is actually the first podcast that I've been interviewed on. And so I really appreciate you guys reaching out about it.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure for us too. Look, by the look of our webcam, it's time for Nighty Night.
I know,
So
it's getting dark.
Tavis Beam and Thom Gibson, I'm Danny Hogger. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be with you on the next edition of Inspiring Teachers. See you later, everybody.